you'll kind of understand. So try to hold, I guess, most of your questions till the end, and then we'll get them. If it's something really, the world's going to stop turning if we don't answer it, then let me know. But we'll leave it at that for now. So this is kind of the same thing Kevin just talked about. I'm also one of the AECs for the Spokane County Aries Group and ACS. We have Oxcom up here, and so I'm one of the assistant coordinators for that as well. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you might mention what you do for a living as well. It might be interesting.
Oh, yeah. So I'm actually a church employee as well. I am the temple facility manager here for the Spokane Temple. So I keep it running in my spare time. But yeah, I've been doing that. I started with the church back in 1987 at the Logan Temple, and I'm currently on my 4th temple. And if all goes well, I'll be moving to my 5th one here by the end of the year, when they announce groundbreaking for the new Coeur d'Alene temple that they just announced in October. So we'll see how that all works out, but that's the plan at this point in the game. So that's what I do. So luckily, I have a very forgiving employer when it comes to my mission stuff. To give you an idea, so when I first got up here, I was actually a calling. So I was the Spokane Coordinating Council Emergency Communications Specialist. That eventually got turned into a mission. And I have just been extended one more time, so I'm about almost 10 years into my 18-month service mission. So just to give you an idea, if they call you to that, just hang on, because you're not going anywhere anytime soon. So I like to have fun with these things. This is a little cartoon I caught hold of several years ago. I think it has an application for everything we do. Because I think even as radio operators, we can kind of get stuck in a rut and think that we got it all figured out. And we always have to be testing our equipment, making sure everything works, making sure we still work, we still know how it all goes, you know, if we haven't used a mode in a while. And I think this is just a fun little cartoon to help us remember to not only check our stuff at home and food and all that kind of stuff, but also make sure we check our stuff when it comes to radio. So what we are here tonight to talk about specifically is GMRS FRS. I do have 2 slides on amateur radio, but we are not going to be talking about that tonight. We're going to be specific to FRS GMRS and kind of what we do here in Spokane, how we've got the program set up and how we kind of operate what we do here. My first question for everybody is, why are we here? What is the point of what we do? And I want you to kind of think about that. Everybody's kind of got their own reasons for why they do it, but I want you to really think about why we do what we do. So I have a theme this year, and it's called Feed the Horses. And it entails the story of Ammon. If everybody knows the story of Ammon, we all know that Ammon, went on his mission, got to be good friends with the king, and the king wanted him to marry his daughter. He said, "Nope, I just want to be one of your servants." And then Ammon went out into the fields and did what Ammon did. And when they came to shoo away all the king's flocks, he kind of took care of that little situation. And as the story goes, those that were with him picked up all the body parts, put them in a cart, and took them back, and were explaining to the king what had happened and what Ammon had done. And if you remember in the story, one of the things the king was really interested in knowing about was, where was Ammon? What was he doing? All the rest of the guys were there explaining it. And they made a nice, simple explanation. They said, Ammon is feeding the horses. And they had been told prior to going out to do this, that when they got back to go feed the horses and get them ready for a journey they were going to be taking. And so Ammon just went about doing what Ammon was told to do. And I would submit to you that we have been told, we have been given instruction for, since 1936 as a church. And especially if you're ERC operators, we've been given all of our direction and what we need to be doing and how we need to be setting things up. And and getting communication for our stakes and our awards and our people and the communities and all those things. And that's our feeding the horses. And so this presentation is kind of one of those ways that we can feed the horses. And so, like I said, that's kind of my theme for our group up here this year in the whole area that I cover. And it's kind of fun to go through and find every month we do meetings and find the things that we can do to help feed the horses. So let's get this part out of the way. These are my couple of slides on amateur radio. For the amateur radio operators, die hard. This is a true statement. And I will say up front, you are not going to run a quality and well-run emergency communications program without amateur radio. It's not going to happen. But at the same time, thinking that you're going to get all of your families and leadership and everybody else to go out and get amateur radio licenses is also not going to happen. And so we have to figure out a way to bridge that. And for us, FRS and GMRS has been the key to bridging that little gap. I bring this little slide up. I'm not going to ask people to unmute, but I use this a lot in my training. Some of you may have seen it before. I want to give you an idea that this is not an AT&T cellular map. This is a map of amateur radio operators in the United States. This is as of 10 years ago. I have not been able to find this map anywhere since, but this is the operators we had 10 years ago, and every year for the last 10 years, we've set new records for guys that have gotten, and females that have gotten their amateur radio licenses. So for amateur radio to get around the community and to get around the country, we can accomplish that task. And to me, that's the easy part of our calling. The really hard part is to get around our ward. To me, that's where we need the information coming from to help us do what we need to do. So I bring these up because we all know if you're an amateur operator, we have the ways of getting communication out of the affected areas and be able to coordinate some things. But it's within the affected areas and especially down to the folks in our wards and in their individual homes that we need to be working toward. And so why GMRS FRS? I want you to think about this picture. This is one that was sent to me years ago about with completely something else, and I've used it for many times since. And the initial, I always ask people when I train is what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you see this picture? And most people, and I was the same way, is what an idiot of a neighbor, the guy that cleaned his side but didn't clean the other side. And that may be what the picture's about, but I think there's several things. The other one that I want to bring up is what if that neighbor with the snow still on their stoop has been such a pain to this poor neighbor every time he tries to help and clean this off that he finally gave up, or they've done all kinds of things to get him to stop because they don't want the help and they don't think they need it. And they look at it as charity and all those other things that we think about. And I would ask all of you to not be one of these, as in the one that's a pain. The one that's more than willing to go and shovel it off, please be. But we have plenty of people within the church and especially within our communities that can tend to be a little bit of a pain when it comes to providing assistance for them, and let's not be one of those. In times of incidents, we need as much help as we can get, and we need people that are willing to play with the rest of us, and so let's not be one of these. Also, things can get messy for those that have participated in incidents. I'm going to show you a couple of videos here real quick.
No audio on the video if it's supposed to be there.
Oh, you know what? Hold on 1 minute.
Yeah, you need to reshare with the video.
Yeah, give me a second. Hold on a minute. Let me end this. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's a Zoom thing. It's not
Yep, it
PowerPoint,
is, and
yeah.
I always forget to do it.
Me too.
So share with sound. Here we go. So let's go back. Hopefully this will go from the current slide like it's supposed to. Hopefully it's working.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's nothing else to do. That's it.
Okay, so I am going to ask people to unmute. What's the point of this video?
They're waiting for help when they could have helped themselves to walking up the escalator?
Yeah, they could have gone actually either way, up or down.
I think it's about society can be overwhelmed with learned helplessness.
Okay,
Don't wait for someone to help you.
We've become so dependent upon technology that we've lost the skills and ability to do.
okay.
Don't overlook the obvious.
Just in general, we're too dependent on others and things.
Okay, so here's one as well. So you have to understand there are going to be people during an incident that are going to do this. It's the proverbial elephant. How do you eat an elephant? And we all know it's one bite at a time. But there are some folks that just can't get that in their head, and so when things become overwhelming to them, they just simply shut down and won't do anything. And so we are going to have these types of people in incidents, and I will tell you from experience, some of them will be the very people you would have never guessed would have been one of those people. So we always, and it doesn't really matter why they are the way they are. The simple fact is they are, and we have to figure out a way that we can still help them and get whatever we can to them and get them taken care of. So we always have to look for these folks. The other one, hold on, let me get to this one. This one's even funner. And this is truly what an incident's going to be like.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't no feeling like it in the world.
Okay, so that one is a very good perspective of what an incident's really going to be like. And I don't care how big or small it is. It's just the degree of cat herding you're doing. But it turns into that fairly quickly. So let's talk about why we do GMRS and FRS. So this is just kind of a short list of why we do it. The radio and equipment are very readily available. It's not very expensive. FRS and GMRS radios are all over the place anymore. If you go down and buy the bubble pack ones at like Walmart or Target or any of those kinds of places, they're already programmed with the frequencies in them. They're channelized 1 through 22. You can't mess with them. You can't do anything with them except for the ones that do repeaters. You can put a tone in them, but that's about it. And so they're easy FC licenses for GMRS. Again, they're fairly simple. You get on now. I say fairly simple right up to the point of when you have to get on the FCC webpage to do it, because that's probably the most difficult part about it. But unlike an amateur license, you don't have to take a test. It's you just give them your $35 on the FCC webpage. They send you a call sign and you're good to go for 10 years. And it covers your whole extended family. Unlike an amateur license, that amateur license is yours. A GMRS license will take care of your extended family, and that's anywhere in the United States, including U.S. territories. And so it's a really nice system for getting short-range communications, which is what we need on a ward level, in the hands of people. Now, why are we looking to do that? The main thing in an incident is you want to shelter in place until you can't shelter in place any longer. And so we don't want people outside. We don't want you becoming part of the incident if you don't need to be. And that includes being able to go through your ward and being able to find out how people are doing. And if you have to get in a car or on a bicycle or ride a skateboard or whatever it is to go around your community, you are now putting yourself in the potential of becoming part of the incident. So the more people we can get radios in their hands where they can contact their ward and stake folks and their zone captains, which we'll talk about that in a minute, the easier it is for all of this information to get passed, collected, and taken care of so we can get help to folks as fast as we can. If you don't know GMRS and FRS, there's 22 channels, 22 frequencies that the FCC has set aside, and these are the frequencies that are already programmed in radios. Can't do anything about it. I just realized, oh no, I don't. So with an FCC license, GMRS license, you'll notice up on this side, you can go up to 5 watts on these channels. And down here, you can go to 50 watts with the license. Everything else, you're at 2 watts or half a watt. And I forgot to change these, I'm sorry, but these right here are actually 2 watts minimum or maximum power without a license. These are half a watt no matter what you do. And so even though on FRS, we don't get a lot of range out of them, given the way that we set our stuff up here in Spokane, and I'm sure others do the same thing, we don't need a lot of range. We just need folks to be able to contact other folks in their ward boundaries. And obviously, if you have a rural ward, that's going to change as well. But the GMRS side of this can take care of that problem as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. So this is the repeater pairs for GMRS repeaters. Again, already set up. This is FCC stuff. We can't change these. These are the frequencies that have been allocated for GMRS repeater pairs. If you don't know about repeaters, to use a repeater, you have to have 2 frequencies, an input and an output. And these frequencies are already set up by the FCC. About the only thing you can change on these is the tones that are required to get in and out of those repeaters. And the vast majority of GMRS repeater owners do what is called tone squelch, where they have a tone for both in and out. For those that I don't know what we've got on here, but there may be some folks here that don't know radio that well. But the tone that I'm talking about is your radio will put out what's called a subaudible tone. The repeater will hear that tone, and that's what will allow you the opportunity to function on a repeater. This is a huge tool for the kind of communications we're trying to do within a ward and a state boundary. And it really helps things a lot. I can tell you when I first got here to Spokane, there were none. I set my first one up when I was here about 6 months. I found a nice repeater site was able to get a repeater up. Since I did that back in 2016, we now have 21 repeaters that kind of cover this whole part of the panhandle of Idaho and over into Washington, the eastern part of Washington. So my area, just to give you an idea, just for the Spokane Coordinating Council, I cover all the way down to Grangeville, Idaho, to the south, up into Canada to the north, all the way over to Libby, Montana, to my east, and just past over kind of toward a straight line north from the Tri-Cities of Washington. And so it's a huge area. Like I said, we've got 14 states that cover that area. And so of that 14, 9 of those are within what I would consider the panhandle of Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Hayden, and Spokane, and all of its suburbs proper, and the rest of them are down in Lewiston and Moscow, Pullman, Washington, up in Sandpoint, Idaho, and then one we have that's up in Colville, Washington. Both the Colville, Washington, and the Sandpoint, Idaho stakes actually cover units that are up in Canada as well. So we cover all those wonderful areas. So those are all those. We're not going to get too much into radios tonight. That can be a fun little conversation, and that's a whole meeting unto itself. Just be aware that you can get radios from all over the place anymore that'll do GMRS FRS. Some of them are specific to FRS GMRS. Others are what we call an open radio, and let you kind of do FRS GMRS, amateur bands, and a few other assorted ones. Just be careful when you're getting a GMRS FRS radio, and make sure that it will, if you're going to have a GMRS license, that it will operate repeaters. Make sure it says on whatever you're getting that it will in fact allow you to operate repeaters. There are GMRS FRS radios out there that do not, and so they're not going to do a whole lot of good for you. Same thing when it comes to a mobile base, which we're going to talk about a little bit about those in here in a minute. But mobile bases, same thing. There's a couple of different companies out there now. Midland makes one that's specific to FRS GMRS. It does do repeaters. The only thing I'm not a big fan of this radio is that it will only allow you to set up one repeater per channel at a time. So if you have multiple repeaters on the same channel with different tones, you actually have to go in and change the tone on the radio to be able to communicate with those other repeaters. Some of these commercial ones, you can do everything. And I will tell you, some of the commercial ones, older ones from ICOM, Kenwood, some of those have actually been grandfathered in after they made a bunch of the changes to the FRS and GMRS stuff a few years ago. These radios were actually grandfathered in and are still Part 95 compliant, which is what the FCC considers FRS and GMRS. So if you look around, you can find them, and they make life much easier because you can program multiple repeaters in them. Okay, and mobile bases are wonderful things, especially in rural wards and states, because obviously you can get out much more wattage, bigger antennas, all those fun things, and be able to cover a much wider area. This is one of my repeater sites here in Spokane. This just looks right off. This is on a 2,800-foot hill here in Spokane, and looks right down into the valley and covers pretty much everything in Spokane all the way through the panhandle of Idaho. So really good coverage on it. This is the antenna right here, and it does a nice job. This is the repeater itself, just for folks that have never seen them. Kind of what a repeater is. It's just another radio basically with a few more extra parts to it, but it gets the job done, and it's been up and running almost 10 years now and does a very nice job for us here in Spokane. Okay, so let's talk about how we train here in the Spokane and what we do here in the Spokane Coordinating Council. So here's the information needed. This is from Salt Lake. This is the information that they kind of need to know. This is off of the providentliving.org website, if you've never been there. On providentliving.org, there's a page. If you look on the left-hand side of that screen, it'll show you a link there for emergency preparedness, and this is all part of that. So the 5 questions that we need to be able to answer, and these 5 questions, the goal is to have these answered within 3 hours of an incident. So they are, how are the full-time missionaries doing? How's our church and the community doing, our church members? How are our church buildings? So can they be used for distribution centers? If we need to use them for shelters, can they be used for that? I would advise you, do not go into a damaged building. If it looks damaged from the outside, stay out. If it looks like it's in decent shape, go in and be able to note whether we can use that building or not, if it's usable. Same with the community. What's the overall effects? Kind of what happened, what's going on, how's the infrastructure, those kinds of things, and then the anticipated needs. So those are the 5 questions that Salt Lake and leadership, even in your local area, are going to need kind of answered fairly quick so that they can start kind of formulating what is going to be needed. Okay. This is our goal here in Spokane, is to provide the right information to the right people at right time so they can make the right decisions. We are communications guys. We are not decision makers. We don't, unless you're called specifically, we don't hold the keys to that stuff. That's for Bishop stake presence in Area 70s. We're just the one that helps provide the needed information they need to be able to make the right decisions and get help on its way as to the best that we can, working both with the church and civil authorities. And so this is our goal. This is how we train all of our folks. And we want to do this within that 3-hour window I talked about. Border and stake numbers. So these are real numbers of what you really need as a minimum for radio operators on a bare minimum. On a ward level, you're going to need 20 to 30. On a stake level, you're going to need a minimum of 5 to 10. And I'll show you how this works for us. But these are very, very bare minimum. We've got wards that literally have 200 and 300 operators, whether they be amateur, GMRS, or both, on ward levels. And we have stakes that have 600 to 800 easily that have been licensed. So without this minimum number, you're not going to be able to communicate a lot within your ward and boundaries without folks really having to go out of their way and get in vehicles or travel around the ward boundaries, which we want to try to avoid. Okay. So why so many? So let me give you an idea. So I'm just using this map because it's one I have from when I was in Vegas. This is the Sunrise Stake that's located right up by the temple in Las Vegas. I will give you an idea. The temple, if you're looking at the map, the temple is, let's see, where are we? Where am I? So the temple is kind of right up in this area, right up in here on this map. And this is just the ward boundaries. And then this is a ward that I have. This is my ward from a few years ago before we did a split. But this is how we split up our wards. So we break it down. We just take a map of our ward boundaries. We split it into zones, or what we call zones. You can call them areas, whatever you want. And then we call a zone captain and an assistant zone captain for each one of these zones. And as they communicate within their zone, on their weekly nets for their ward and their stakes, they will report in on those things. And this is why I'm telling you, the more people we can get within these, even with just FRS radios, people can relay through these little areas and be able to get the information they need to their zone captains, who in then turn will get it to their ward, who in turn will get it to their stake. And so this is how we go about training all of our stakes and all of our wards to break up their areas and make them so they're smaller and more convenient to be able to get the communication we need throughout them. So the Spokane Council, we also use tactical call signs. I actually use these in the whole area that I cover for all of the Northwest United States. And these are wonderful because I don't know about you, but I have a hard enough time trying to remember the leadership in my own ward, much less the 900 that I cover in my mission duties. And so this helps us to not have to worry about that. And so this is a list of the tactical call signs that we use. Every one of our stakes and wards are set up with these. And we ask folks that when they check in the nets on a weekly basis, that they use these for a couple of reasons. One, so that they get used to using them. But number two, so people get used to hearing them. And so basically all it is the tactical call are these numbers right here. And you would use your stake name. So I'll give you an example. I am in the Spokane East stake. So my stake present would just say I'm Spokane East 1. He doesn't need to give me his name, doesn't need to give me his title, doesn't need to do anything. I already know who I'm talking to just by the fact that he said the Spokane East stake 1. Same in a ward. It would be the ward. My ward is Bella Vista, so it would be the Bella Vista 1. I know I'm talking to the bishop. And down through the list. These are given to everybody that's in the ward council, including emergency communications and emergency prep specialists. You'll see them right there. Have their own tactical call signs. And so I am Spokane Council, and North America West North 5 is my tactical call, and that lets everybody know that I'm the emergency communications specialist for those areas. And so this is a huge help to us, especially in nets and in some of the emergency incidents that we've had last several years. We've had major fires up here. I can tell you 3 years ago, we had a huge major one in one of our wards. They were actually in the middle of their ward net on a Sunday night, and their ward got put into a level 3 evac. Their bishop was one of the first ones to have to get out of his place. That ward net was run on a GMRS repeater, and that ward net went from a typical ward net to an emergency net, and that net ran for the next 19 days, 24/7. We had lots of operators that went up and helped with that. It was a huge deal, and eventually we ended up with Department of DNR, Department of Natural Resources, our fire folks up here, were wanting to know where all this information was coming from that different groups were getting. And so they put a call into Spokane County Emergency Management. Our emergency manager knew exactly where it was coming from and called me and said, what do we need to do to get DNR this information? I said, get them a GMRS radio. It's really easy, which they don't carry. They don't put in their headquarters or anything. So we ended up putting operators in their EOC with the GMRS radio so they could hear the traffic going on in these nets. And it worked out really well. And we were able to help a ton of people. And now I will tell you this as well. In that, we had lots of people that had horses, all kinds of livestock, all kinds of things that were under evacuation orders. Here in Spokane, at the county fairgrounds, what they do here is that all the areas they use for the 4-H club during the fair, they actually have a group of 4-H folks and some other folks that volunteer their time to take care of people's livestock. So you can actually bring your livestock to the fairgrounds. They use all the pens and everything they use during the fair, and they will take care of your livestock and stuff for you. The problem was in this particular area, they're about an hour drive away from Spokane proper. And so what was interesting about this is we put out on our GroupMe page, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that this net was going on and had people go over to it so they can hear it going on and kind of hear what happens. And with that, we had over 200 people that volunteered their time, their trucks, their livestock trailers, all of those things to come and help people get their livestock off of their property and get them taken care of. Which if we were using phones and those kinds of things, they would have never even known it was needed. And so because it was over the radio, people were hearing it and volunteering to help out. We even had people volunteering at points once the fire kind of went away. We're helping out at roadblocks and all that kind of thing to keep away all of those wonderful people that like to go in and take advantage of folks when they're in these kinds of needs. And so it was a really awesome thing. And we had to actually bring this list with us to DNR so they would know who we're talking about when it comes to our tactical call signs. They were amazed that a church would have such an organization set up. I will tell you that stake, before that fire, we averaged about 150 to 200 check-ins a week from that. That stake now currently, we get about 650 a week from that stake. It opened up a lot of minds, and eyes to see what a program could do. And it was awesome to listen to the bishop during this incident actually getting and giving instructions to his ward council and other members of the church via a radio while he was evacuating his family. It was an amazing thing to listen to, and we've had it now several times, and it's worked out really well. If you paid any attention to the stuff going on in North Carolina after Helene, same concept. A lot of people can owe their lives and their livelihoods to folks on FRS and GMRS radio. It kind of saved the day for the first couple of days. There's some cool stuff on the internet of them actually doing helicopter drops via our FRS radios. There was a couple of guys that got a repeater up really soon, drove up to the top of the highest hill they could put up a portable repeater, and that was what communications was for some of these folks for the first few days before other things could get set up. So it can be a really great tool if people know how to use it and they practiced in it. We do that. So kind of the minimum stuff that we request out of our folks, so our zone leaders and families, we would like to have them at minimum with an FRS radio and a GMRS license if we can get them to do it. The ward ECS, we need them to have a minimum of a GMRS license and an amateur tech license if we can get them, and then with a mobile and a HT and a mobile base. Our stake ECS GMRS license, amateur tech, and an HT with a mobile base with outside antenna, the whole shoot match, and then our council ECS GMRS license, amateur general license, HTs and mobile bases. Most of us have go boxes, all that fun stuff to go with it. But these are kind of the minimum requirements when somebody gets called to these positions of what we would like them to have. And I will tell you, for the most part, we are able to accomplish this. It's amazing how many folks we kind of say that GMRS radio is our gateway drug to amateur radio, because people can, once they can see what a GMRS license will do with the extra power, those kinds of things, especially if you've got a ward that's spread out, they really get the idea really fast. And then when they can see what we can do with amateur radio just on top of that, it gets a lot of people kind of fired up to get their amateur licenses. So we do classes and all that fun stuff. So we have a number of folks that have done that. Communication lines up and down. It's zone to zone captain to ward ECS to the priesthood and stake ECS to the priesthood and council ACS, and then council ECS is to all those that need the information, including civil authorities. We don't want all of our different folks calling everybody every 2 minutes. So we've got it broke down that this is how we want people communicating. This is how we do it on our stake nets every week and on our council net every week. So everybody reports in, and then on my council net, I'll give you some numbers here. Kevin asked me to kind of show you what we do. But when they check in on Sunday nights to my council net, we do a call for anybody that wants to check in, but our stake ECS folks are the main people that are checking into that net on Sunday nights. What gets reported? So these are the things that we report on a weekly basis, and I'll show you a spreadsheet that shows these. So we want to know how many units participated in our stake nets, how many leadership participated in all of our nets. Leadership constitutes anybody in a stake or ward council, including their counselors in like stake and relief society, young men, young women, presidencies, all those. How many total folks participated in your stake and unit nets combined? How many units held their own subnets that week? How many participated in those subnets? And then how many missionary companionships check in? We actually have FRS radios in our missionary apartments approved by the church's mission department. And so they actually check into their ward FRS nets on a weekly basis as well. And we've got about half the mission right now that does that, which is a great help to the mission president. This happened because about 5 or 6 years ago, we had a town here called Mullen, Washington, that basically turned into the Paradise Fire in California from a few years ago. It was wiped off the planet. The whole city was burned to the ground. We had four missionaries in that city And before they could get on their phones to let everybody know they were being evacuated, their kind of rule, cell towers were down. They had no ability to do that. And the way missions work is missionaries report to their district leaders via phone. District leaders go to their zone leaders go to the assistants to the president, the assistants go to the mission president. So we've been able to get radios in their hands and in their apartments. And I give a list to the mission president so that he knows where every one of the state emergency communications specialists are in the mission. So in the event that he's out of town, which he is a lot, we have no idea where he'll be in an incident. He is to go to the state communications specialist in the state that he's at. They will let us know where he is, and then we can report information to him on his missionaries that he can get back to Salt Lake as he needs to report them. So that's kind of how we do that. We also use phone trees, texting when available. We have GroupMe app that we use. We set up GroupMe apps for all the wards and all the stakes and the council. And we use 2 per every one of those. So one of them is a chat group. The other one is emergency only. So for folks that don't want a ton of traffic going across, they can sign up for just the emergency alerts only. And that's all they're going to get. And we ask folks to not do any kind of back and forth on the emergency unless it's absolutely part of the emergency. Take it over to the chat channel for that ward or stake or council and do it over there. And again, works out really well. We're able to get a lot of information out when those things are working. So it does help. So let me give you an idea. I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to bring up something else for you so you can kind of get an idea of what our stuff looks like. So this is the spreadsheet that I use on Sunday nights for my check-ins for the council. This is all of that stuff I just showed you a minute ago. So this number right here, this is by the week for the month of February. You can see that. So this is how many units checked into their stake nets that week. This right here is how many leadership checked into all of their ward and stake nets that week. Again, that's everybody in the ward council. This is the total number of check-ins they had for the stake that week with all of their ward and stake nets. This is how many units had their own subnet that week and how many people checked into those subnets that week. And then this is the number of missionary companionships that checked into their ward nets that week. That all equals up to some pretty fun numbers. You can get an idea. This is what we average on a weekly basis. Here in Spokane for total check-ins, this is our leadership. This is all of our totals. This is how many subnets we have in our units. We have 124 units here in the Spokane Coordinating Council. So you can see even with all these numbers, we only have about half of those that are participating when it comes to ward nets. So we're still working on that, but we're doing much better with it. And then we also hold GMRS nets twice a month. And we hold a simplex net once a month, just to keep people up and running on it. So that's kind of how that all works out and what it looks like. Before I stop sharing the screen, does anybody have any questions on this screen? Because I'm going to go back to my presentation.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you scroll back down to the bottom and can you tell me out of the 2,084 check-ins, how many of those were on GroupMe? How many were on text? How many were on GMRS? How many were on?
So we average about 12 to 1,300 check-ins a week on FRS GMRS. On GroupMe, I haven't checked it in a while, but I would say it's probably no more than about 100 to maybe 150. Texting is even lower than that. When we first started getting this all built up, that was the majority of our check-ins. We ask people to not do it if they don't have a radio available. We even have folks when they're out of town now.
Recording stop.
They will check into their ward nets via GroupMe when they're even out of town, which is really nice because it keeps it in their head and helps them to remember to do it. So we also, just so people know, we ask our wards to do a weekly net. There are some bishops and leadership that want to do them like twice a month or once a month. We encourage them to do them every week. That doesn't mean everybody has to check in every week. We want them to check in a minimum of two times a month. But we want them to be held same day, same time every week. So that way, if somebody's been off of their net for a while, they're not trying to remember, oh, was it the third or fourth Sunday or Wednesday or whatever, and what time? They know on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock on this frequency, their net's going to be running and somebody's always there. I just had somebody the other night, it's kind of funny, on my stake on the council net, had a gentleman get on and he's like, I'm totally shocked and surprised. And I said, why is that? He says, I have not been on my radio for 2.5 years. And I got back on my radio tonight and thought, well, let me check. And sure enough, the net was on 9:15 Sunday night, like it always is. So that's how we kind of encourage folks to do it. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? Okay, as we sit. Oh, go ahead.
Evening.
All right, as we hear in the radio world, nothing heard. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this real quick and get back into the presentation real fast. We're just about done, and then you guys can hit me up for all the questions you want. I just have a couple pictures for those that may not have ever seen it. This is the radio room at the church office building in downtown Salt Lake. This gentleman right over here is Elder Michael Stamford. He's the director of the ERC program for the church. So this is real stuff. It's not a bunch of people just making it up. There's 6 of these little cubicles all set up exactly the same. Antennas up on the roof of the church office building. They can pretty much operate any mode you want to talk about out of here, digital or otherwise. And then they have 2 more redundant setups of this setup in Salt Lake, one at Welfare Square and the other one over at the main Bishop Storehouse in Ogden. So if something were to happen, they have the means of being able to get on and do their thing. And that's a view from outside of the radio room on the 27th floor of the church office building down into Temple Square. That's where you look out when you turn around from your chair in your cubicle. So it's really nice. All right, that's all I have. I went through it really quick. I think I covered everything Kevin asked me to do, but I wanted to make sure we left plenty of time for questions and all those fun things. I'm going to leave my information up on the screen for right now. So if anybody needs email, phone number, or any of that, please feel free to contact me. I'll answer as much as I can and help in any way I can. But that's all I have, Kevin, if that covers everything you were asking for.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So go ahead and unmute your mic if you have a question, and then mute it back when you finished your question. But just to clarify, we've got a few people asking if they can get a copy of the slides and the spreadsheet. So I check with you, and if you're okay, we'll make that available.
Yeah, I'll get it over to you, Kevin, and you can make it available to whoever you need.
Okay.
I have a question. The Wrigley Steak has been on board with GMRS for about 5 years, but the steak bought the radios for just a select number of leaders, and I'm just wondering, do the members buy their own radio?
Yes. So up here, I will tell you in my own stake, so the Spokane East stake, our stake did the same thing. It went out and bought radios for everybody